welcome to episode 21 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we figured we'd talk about some popular books that we don't like as much as some other people do. I guess there's a lot of popular books, especially on Instagram and TikTok, that people will really rave about. But then when you read them, you are kind of left thinking, why though? So I know I've had a few of them semi-recently. But what about you, Kristen?
So I do have a couple of recent ones, but I also have quite a few that are more like old school that sort of predate Instagram and TikTok. So for me, one of the ones that is sort of really popular right now is the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And to be honest, I didn't dislike the first book in the series.
Mm-hmm.
You actually suggested it to me last year, and I read it very quickly, and I was actually enjoying it. And then I read the second one, and it was okay. There was some questionable consent sort of stuff in there, and
Mm-hmm.
um it seemed to fall back on a lot of um similar lines and similar tropes. Like,
Yeah.
it just felt like the main couple, who I actually really liked, like kept saying this, repeating the same lines over and over again to each other, or like kept having the same issue over and over again. And it just sort of felt like it just stilted the writing a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Very
um
repetitive.
Very repetitive. And I did manage to get to the third book, which is The Crown of Gilded Bones. And I think I got maybe like 100 pages in, and I just got very confused um, with the just no shame, no shade or anything like that. I just got very confused with the like
Plot.
the plot, and just like, there are vampires, but then there are like one step above them, but then there are also them one step above them, and then there's another step above them of like mystical
Mm-hmm.
beings, and then she's related to like 3 tiers above. I just couldn't wrap my head around it and just found it a bit convoluted.
Yeah.
um and again, like, the repetitiveness didn't help.
Yeah. I'm just gonna cut in here because I did the exact same thing for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
Literally got to book 3
Mm-hmm.
of the series, and then I was like, I hadn't even read the other ones super like early based on when I was reading the third one, and I was like, I feel like to understand this book, I would need to start at the first one again and read them straight in a row, and it just felt like too much effort to put into a book that, like you said, is repetitive. And like there was just it was like miscommunication trope after miscommunication trope after miscommunication trope, and I was like, I can't do this again. But yeah, I had to cut in there because I literally stopped at the same book for the exact same reason.
And to be fair, like, I honestly do almost feel bad saying, like, mentioning it, because I did really enjoy what the author tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the idea, and I actually did really like the character development of the first two, of the main couple. I
Yeah.
really liked their character development in book 1,
Yeah.
and I thought she did a great job. But I don't know if there was like, I don't know how long she was working on the first book
Mm-hmm.
to get it out. Then book 2 came out the very same year, and book 3 came out the very next year.
Mm-hmm.
And book 4 is set, I think, to come out late this year, maybe next year. I feel like it's this year though.
Yeah.
So I just feel like she's pumping them out.
Well, and she wrote a prequel that already came out this year.
Right. So it just seems like maybe there's pressure on her to get them out in a timely manner or a timely manner, sorry, and maybe like the substance is falling a little bit.
Yeah.
But like again, I still really liked the first book, and I really like the characters she created. I just the repetitiveness really got to me.
Yeah.
Um I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one, but The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, I could not. Like, I did manage to almost read the whole thing of the
The whole
first
first
book.
one?
The
Okay.
whole first book. Yeah. And it could partly be my fault in that I do tend to Wikipedia things because I like if I get annoyed with how things are going, I want to make sure it turns out in a way that I'm okay with. And I've mentioned that before.
Mhm.
Um, but I just like, I just didn't like any of the characters. Like, really, except for the older sister that wanted to
Mm.
like escape.
She's the only fairy and she wants to go back to the human world.
Yeah, that's like, obviously, I didn't like the stepmother or or like the father figure. And I didn't like any of like the mean group of fairies. Um and I wasn't even a huge fan of Jude, to be honest, because I didn't really understand her motivation. Like, she wanted to stay in fairy. Why? Her life was terrible. Like, I
Mhm.
understand it was the only thing she knew, but like just move on. Like, just go be with your sister who loves you and like live amongst the humans because that's what you are.
Yeah.
And
And Jude's twin sister
oh my
was
god,
even worse than
whatever her
anybody
name is,
else.
Taya or Tyra or something, I literally could not stand her. I could not believe she did what she did. No
Mm.
spoilers, but it was the absolute, like, I would have kicked her in the shins.
In the shins. Yes.
I just couldn't I couldn't grow to enjoy any of the characters, and I didn't really care what happened to them. So, I'm sorry, Bookstagram, book talk, book TikTok, whatever. Like, don't come for me. I can't help it. It's just my personal choice.
That's fair.
Um, Going sort of older school now. Uh, going to some. So, the Diana Gabaldon series, Outlander. I managed to. I started reading those ages ago, and I stopped at I stopped at book 5, A Breath of Snow and Ashes. Um, Not for any reason, but just sort of a similar thing. It was just sort of repetitive. Like, they were living back in time. They had to stop a historical event, couldn't stop it. So they participated and tried to like make the best of it. Oh, and then they're separated. Oh, and then they're back together because they love each other. Oh, and then they're separated again. Oh, and then they're back together. It just felt repetitive. And
Mhm.
I just couldn't get into it. And they're also like, you know how some books are like really long, but
Mhm.
you could still get through them in like a couple of days?
Yeah.
This is not one of those series. Like, her
Mhm.
books are like 600 pages a piece, and it takes a while to get through them. Like, you can't sit and binge it.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't continue.
Yeah.
But it just got repetitive for me. Um Wayward Son, Rainbow Rowell. I know you recommended Carry On to me, and I did read it, and I really liked it, and I was really excited to read the next one. And it just was, I just, again, like, I don't know, it just was maybe slow to start, or it just took a while to get to the action. Things just were not connecting the way that they did
Mhm.
in the first book.
Yeah.
Um, Going real old school now. um, Hollywood Wives is a book that came out in 1983. Like, And I obviously didn't read it in 1983. But I don't know how, but it went through my friend group back when we were in, like, I don't know if we were in high school or just leaving high school or something like that. One of my friends had a copy and read it and said, this is amazing. Like, everyone should read it. So, like, everyone in my friend group took a turn with
Mhm.
it. And I just didn't like it at all. It was like literally, there was like 20 different characters. So, like, it changed points of view to like
Mhm.
all those different characters. And it was just, I couldn't get it. But like, I looked it up and apparently, so it's by Jackie Collins and it was like her most popular book. It sold like 15 million copies. And I don't understand how.
Makes sense.
Uh and then the last one, and again, people, please don't come for me for this one because it's a classic, but Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I really didn't like it. And I was forced to read it in high school. And I'm putting it on this list because I will argue to my dying day that it is not a good book. I just don't like it. And all the main character, Holden Caulfield, whatever his name is, all he does is complain the whole time. And I find that bothersome.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's not like, I don't know. I don't know who's going to argue with me about it. I know some people probably would. I could not. I, I just can't. I used to actually argue with my English teacher about, because he would try and argue its merits, and I would be arguing right back, saying, no, this is terrible in high
Mhm.
school. And it's funny now because I've worked with him as an adult. And it's one of the only things he remembers about me as a student.
In a good or a bad way?
Um, Not in a bad way, actually.
Oh,
He's
that's
like
good.
he's like, you had an opinion and you voiced it, so good for you. He was like, I don't agree with you, but at least, you were one of the few that, voiced your opinions.
Well, and
So
had one on a book that most people did not read.
probably yes. And, at least I talked about it, but still, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
what's on your list? Books you didn't like?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with every single book that I was forced to read in school.
Okay.
Uh so Catcher in the
Every
Rye is
every
probably
single
on
one?
that list. Yeah.
Like, what about the Shakespeare ones?
They're plays, they're not books.
Oh my god. Wow.
No, but I honestly I didn't like them at the time because I didn't understand what the fuck I was reading. So yeah, I'll stick by that. I'll stand by my stance of every single book I read.
Didn't you have to read
Which one?
The Giver? So good.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't have to read it.
And Who is Francis Frayne? So good.
Oh, actually, I did read that one,
Ha.
and I liked that one. Thank
That was a
you.
good one. Yeah. That
Yes.
was that was grade 7, folks.
Yeah. But and Dracula. I like Dracula, but I read it before I had to read it in school because I was obsessed with vampires anyway. So
Yeah.
that was a bit different. But any of the ones that I
Like The
just
Pearl.
didn't. I don't know if I read that.
Oh my god, it was terrible.
Well, and then the other thing too, especially in like grade 12, they were like, you need to make sure you read 2 of these 5 books for the essay so that you can compare and contrast. So I only read 2 of the 5 books at best, if I even read them. Like I was like such a reader growing up, but I refused for some reason. I don't even know why. But anyway, um I'll start with one that I remember hating with the most passion was Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And I don't even think I finished the book, but it was my first year of university and I was doing an English course and I was like, I'm going to actually put some effort into reading these. And I was like, I don't even know why or what about it. I think it's just somebody telling me I have to read something and I'm automatically like, I can't. Just
Although I
which
tell you
is
to
where I
read
am.
things, I tell you to read things all the time.
But it's where I am with shows with you now. You're like, watch
That's true.
this, and I'm like, no. So it's
That's
very
true.
similar to that. Um,
Yeah.
I also remember when I was younger, I think before I started reading Harry Potter, I went to Chapters and they were like, this book will be good for this child. And it was Sunwing by Kenneth Opel.
Mm-hmm.
I just could not get into it. And I don't even, it was so long ago, but I
And
don't remember why, but I just did not like it.
that actually is a book that we still do in junior high English.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do it in grade 7 English, yeah.
That's hilarious. I didn't
Yeah.
have to read it for school, but they suggested it, and yeah, didn't love it. Two that I'm kind of gonna group together are Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, and like I love the Carry On series by her, but just the way the book goes isn't really my genre of book, I've decided. And Paper Towns by John Green. The way the books read, it's not, I guess I'm more of a fantasy reader than and a romance reader than whatever genre these books are, because they're kind of just like snapshots in people's lives and then they end and it doesn't actually conclude with anything. So you're just like, why did I bother reading this? Is how I feel. And I know some people love that kind of book, which is completely fine, but it just didn't resonate with me and I didn't love it. I got to throw in 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
I couldn't read it because my mother read it. So I couldn't even look at the books. I know you actually read them, but I couldn't. I physically saw that my mother had copies of them and I was like, I cannot. And I have not read them and I will never read them.
Do you know what my like worst decision ever was? So I read them. And I don't know if my mom read them or not, but my husband and I and our firstborn child, when she was a small baby, were on vacation with my mom and my dad and my husband's mom and dad, and we were all on vacation, and we the first 50 Shades movie had just come out in theaters.
Oh my God.
So I guess sort of as a break for me from the baby, like, here, go off for a couple hours. Why don't you go do something? So we decided to go see a movie. And when we got to the theater, that's what was playing. So that's what we all went to see. So it was literally me, my mother, and my mother-in-law watching 50 Shades.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was
something. I would say.
It was something. It was awkward as fuck.
Wow.
Anyway, I will never make that mistake again.
Yeah, that's impressive. I can just imagine. Wow.
Yeah.
I did go see one of the movies with you and like found it hilarious and like it was good in a campy way, kind of the same way that Twilight is. Like I don't dislike it, but I will never read the books solely because my mother read them.
But I will say that as sort of as cringy as the movies are, the books are worse.
Okay, well, I'm never going to read the books. So can't. Another series, I guess, that I think we both read is the House of Night series by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. And I remember it started off good.
Yeah.
But then it kind of just went downhill and I lost interest very quickly. So it kind of reminds me of like the From Blood and Ash series. I don't know if maybe it was too repetitive. I actually can't remember. It's been quite some time since I read it, but that could be the reason. I know that fell off the radar.
I know that there's like 20 of them now. There are so many.
Well, it would have to get repetitive at that point. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Two more recent ones, I guess, are Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. It was very high school for me. and I think I'm just too old for it, and I just did not relate to it in any way, and I was like, where are these children's parents, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're not relating to the characters anymore. You're relating to the adults.
Yeah, but it was like, but it's like a smutty book. So it was even, I was like, ugh.
Right.
So I'm too old for that book, which I guess is more my fault than the book's fault. But
Yeah.
um and the last one that I read recently is the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Hoang. I do feel like it got better the further I got into the series. So I did read all 3 books, so I didn't hate it that much. But I think I mostly read it because like it it was a different, so there's different characters in each series that are autistic, and I like that kind of representation isn't normal in books, so I think that's
Mhm.
kind of like what kept me reading. Um but like I didn't dislike them. I just didn't love them as much as some people do love them on the interwebs.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to get into this week, but just a heads up, we are not a spoiler-free zone and things might get a little bit saucy.
Yeah. So we are reading chapters 32 to 42 today. So last week, Celaena found a secret passageway in her room, and it brought her down to a tomb that had the sarcophagi of King Gavin and Queen Elena, who were rulers of Aderlin 1,000 years ago, and there are like fairy tales about them now, about and like legends about how they defeated like the dark entity and like ruled the world, like saved the day essentially. And she actually gets visited by uh I'm gonna call her like Spectre Elena, and
Mm-hmm.
she's sort of cryptic and gives her some like you have to rid the castle of evil sort of things, and she's being really cryptic, um and Selena sort of like identifies it and then just sort of like moves on with her life and dealing with the championship, like the competition that she's still in. um she learns about things called word marks from Nehemia, and um the last thing that we talked about was she did another challenge to do with poisons, and she trusted her little buddy Peller, who was like the young assassin, and he sort of steered her in the right direction. um so yeah, the next sort of time we see Celaena after this challenge, um, there's a quite a significant time jump, I guess we'll say. So we lead up, and there's only 1 month left till Yulemas. Another champion has died, so that's what that's it's up there now. There's like I think around 3 or 4 that have been
Yeah.
murdered at this point.
Yeah.
It's becoming more common. So she's out strolling with Princess Nehemia of Ilwe. They practice their language skills every day. And she sort of said that Nehemia has really improved in her common language. So they do practice speaking the common language and Ilwe, but they still prefer to converse in Ilwe with each other, mostly because I think that it allows their conversations to be private,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not something that the other people in the castle know how to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, they like to converse in Eelway to keep their sort of conversations private. Nehemia sort of implies that she knows that there are things Celaena doesn't talk about, um, and things that she doesn't say. And of course, we know that this is 100% true because according to Nehemia, Celaena doesn't exist. It's Lady Lillian, right?
Yeah.
So she's saying, oh, I know there are things you don't talk about. And if you need a friend, I'm here.
Mhm.
Um, because on top of that, we have to factor in that Celaena is essentially training, 60% of her day, and she's really not available until late afternoons. So obviously, Nehemia must have questions about where she is all the time, and she can't say. So she's being intuitive, I think. Like, I know there are things that you haven't said, and if you want to talk about it, you can talk to me about it.
Mhm.
She also notices that KL follows her around. Um, and she gets locked in her room at night, which I didn't realize.
Well, there's always been guards outside.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't realize that they legit locked her door,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. I guess it's not something that they should need to do if they have guards,
Yeah.
really.
And she also noticed that she can't do anything. So like last week there was a feast, right? For Samhoon, whatever. Um, and Celaena wasn't allowed to go. So Nehemia is like, I can tell that you're not allowed to do things. Like, it's obvious. And she sort of says, like, I think they're afraid of you. Like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say they're afraid of you. And it's like, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah. Well, we know they are, but
We know they are, yeah.
nobody can tell her that.
Yeah, it's true. On their walk, they end up going to the kennels. So again, in week 2, Dorian sort of mentions in passing in his mind that one of his dogs was about to have a litter of puppies. So Celaena and Nehemia walk to the kennels to see the litter of puppies. Um, Unfortunately, they are mutts, so they cannot be raced.
Mhm.
So he sort of said that he'll just give them away and like make them pets for people. When they're in like visiting all the puppies, Dorian sort of says that one of the puppies has a foul temperament, like it doesn't socialize well, so it's probably just going to be put down. Um, and Celaena gets really indignant about this. She's like, how dare you? Like, just because it doesn't behave how you want it to behave, you're just going to kill it. Like, that's a
Mhm.
terrible thing to do. So she picks it up and she's like, I'm not going to let you hurt it. And like, sort of, like cuddles into it and says she's going to protect it. And Dorian, like, again, we're sort of seeing, in the past couple of episodes, we've sort of seen that Dorian um, he's falling hard for Celaena,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
he's having serious thoughts about her. I don't think it's reciprocated. Like, I think,
As seriously, for
right,
sure.
100%. So he swears on his crown that if it means that much to her, the puppy, he'll let it live and he'll find it a home. So, like,
Mhm.
over a puppy? Not that I
Yeah,
disagree that the puppy should live. Of course I do. I like, what a sin. Don't kill a puppy. It's a terrible thing to do. But the
exactly.
fact that he's like, she's like, oh, he could have just said, okay, I'll find it a home then. Like, he didn't have to swear on his crown, right? Like,
Yes.
that's a bit.
It's a lot. Very extra.
Mm. Um, so on their way back from the kennels, like back to the castle, Nehemia actually says to Celaena that Celaena and Dorian seem to have a connection.
Ooh.
Ooh. And like, I'm sure they do have a connection. And I think that probably just also stems from the fact that he is one of the very few people that know her true identity, that she can really be herself around in this castle.
Yeah.
And she is attracted to him physically.
Well, he's an attractive man, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm sure they do have a connection. Whether it's one that Dorian wants, like I feel like he already sees her wearing her little princess tiara and like being paraded around the palace.
Which is like so presumptuous because like she's a fucking assassin. Like it's not like she's just some girl out here trying to like woo him. She's literally already making her own way. She's already famous. Like she doesn't need him for shit.
She don't need no man.
Exactly.
But back when we first met Nehemia, she sort of mentions that maybe there was hope from other parties that Dorian and her would get married.
Hmm.
But she didn't want to marry him because she essentially insinuated he was a man whore.
Which
Uh,
I don't think she's wrong.
well, but she also said she judged him wrong. Like, she says she thought he was like a pompous asshole, but he's actually not that bad. Like, he's a decent guy.
Mhm.
Um, and Celaena sort of like she goes for it here. So Celaena declares that she would rather cut out her heart than love a Haviliard. And that's Dorian's last name. So she would rather cut out her own heart than love a member of his family. And that, like, I get it. His family, they're the ones that put her in Endovier. They got rid of magic. She's not even from Aderlin. She's from Terrasin, and we don't yet know the extent of what happened to that kingdom. But Aderlin has been conquering kingdoms left, right, and center. So I think it's a
Mhm.
fair assumption that they've conquered her kingdom. Um, so she sort of, I get it. Like his family has done a lot of shit to her, and I'm sure her family. But it's, I don't know, it's a bold claim.
Yeah. Like he's still a prince and he's still you she literally last week for us and a month ago for her
Yeah,
said that she wanted to kiss him.
yeah.
So it's just a very aggressive claim for her to make now. And like I wonder if it's more defensive that she's talking to somebody whose land is also isn't it Eelway is conquered as well, isn't it? Like there's still a king and queen though.
I don't think Eelway is conquered yet. So I guess after this sort of statement, she sort of like really like hurries away from Nehemia and goes back to her room. On her way back to her room, she runs into Kane, who is like right now sort of I'm going to call him the front runner of the competition.
Mm.
And she says he's acting really weird. Like he's opening and closing his mouth like a fish and like clutching his throat. Um, Apparently he doesn't say anything to her, but he like runs off down the hall. So she found that like a really odd interaction because normally he's really like boastful and he like has to get a dig in at her. And he didn't do any of that this time and was just behaving oddly. So
Yeah.
she actually is very thoughtful and sends messages to Knox and Peller, who are the two other competitors that she's sort of close to, and tells them like, stay in your room, do not open the door tonight.
Yeah.
um and like I feel like maybe her mind is starting to work on, like, maybe she's starting to think about these murders. She knows that there's something evil in the castle she has to destroy.
Hmm.
And I wonder if maybe she's starting to put pieces together.
Yeah.
um we jump then to Kaltain. So Lady Kaltain, um we discussed, I think in the last episode, that she's got some pretty severe headaches,
Hmm.
but she sort of just sucks it up and deals with it. Um, but she's just talking now about how her headaches are worse. Like apparently they're unbelievably painful. and she is smoking a ton of opium to help. The issue there being that it's making her high.
Is
Um,
that an issue?
I don't know. She was very concerned. So I guess the Duke Parrington comes to her room to visit, and she like has to hide all the paraphernalia. She has to like air out the room. She like douses herself in perfume. Like she doesn't want anyone to know she's doing the opium at all.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, so Parrington comes to visit her room and they have a little chat. It's really, and obviously we know that obviously she's not sincere with him. Like she's courting him. I don't know if they're engaged yet.
I think there's like intention, but there's no promise.
Right. So on her end, we know that she would rather have Dorian. Obviously, she would rather have a prince than a sweaty, chubby old duke.
Yes.
Um and it seems like he's also sort of using her, but we don't know what for.
Hmm.
So they're chatting with each other, but they're very like calculated chats. And like they're almost like they're each getting jabs in and like planting seeds in each other's minds.
Hmm.
Um, so Parrington says to Kaltain that, oh, the prince called you clever the other day. But when he was going to continue talking about how awesome you are and how amazing you are, Lady Lillian, aka Celaena, interrupted him so that he couldn't keep saying nice things about you, Kaltain. So it sort of planted the seed in Kaltain's mind that it's Lillian, aka Celaena, who is the thing that is preventing Dorian from like considering Kaltain and looking at Kaltain.
Yeah.
When we know the different, like we know that Dorian could care less, which is
Hmm.
unfortunate. Like, it's sort of mean, but it's true.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Kaltain is trying to plant seeds that Lillian is disreputable. So I guess Kaltain doesn't know that Parrington knows that Lady Lillian is not really Lady Lillian,
Yes.
right? Like Parrington knows that she's Celaena Sardothien, Adarlan's assassin. She's not actually a lady. She's not actually out to get Dorian's, you know,
Title.
yeah, to get his hand in marriage or anything like that. She's
Hmm.
literally there for the competition. Kaltain doesn't know that. Kaltain thinks that she's a lady and thinks that Parrington thinks she's a lady.
Hmm.
So she starts planting a seed that Lillian is like disreputable and says that she heard whispers from the court that Lillian isn't suitable as a consort for Dorian. And like, I don't know what she thinks that'll do, but I think she's hoping that Parrington, like, I feel like she's using like her flirting and her feminine wiles to see if Parrington will like get rid of Lillian for her.
Yeah, I don't really know what she thinks that's going to do because like he's even goading her on and it's more obvious as the reader, obviously. That's
Mm-hmm.
how it works and she's also high in this moment. So it's clear that he's he's almost nagging her, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Um, and I guess we also see that like Parrington can tell that she's trying to be manipulative, but at the same time, like he seems okay with it. So like he's totally okay that his potential fiance is like trying to manipulate him into like, and he's using it to his advantage too. But again, like he's trying to manipulate her as well,
mhm,
using Dorian sort of as the bait, but we don't really know why. Like, what is his goal? Why
yeah.
is he trying to manipulate his future wife? Anyway, um, after this little conversation, we pull back to Celaena. She's in her room, and Nehemia, like, sort of, I want to say barge, but barges in the most polite way, because obviously the people aren't going to barge in this, like, in this castle in this time period.
Yeah.
Um, so she comes in, but she's really upset. And I'm not gonna lie, I found it really just like This part was done as tastefully as possible, but I found it hard to read,
Yeah.
this little bit. So Nehemia is upset. She found out that 500 Eelway rebels were caught at the border, like the Adarlan border. And because they were caught, they were going to be sent to Calicula, which is sort of the sister camp, we'll say, of Endovier. So it's
Mhm.
another work camp, like prison work camp. Um, a few of the rebels tried to escape on the way to Calicula. So the Adarlan soldiers that were escorting them um, butchered all of them, even the children that were there.
Yeah.
So I just, obviously it's an event that is meant to um, like it's meant to make you upset and meant to, I feel like, make you a little bit uncomfortable, but um I you can't even imagine. And like, again, we've sort of said before that stuff like this happens, right?
Mhm.
I'm in countries that are at war. I'm sure stuff like this is happening,
Yeah.
but it's hard to, even in a fantasy book, it's hard to read about.
Yeah.
So Nehemia is like really upset, and she's thinking right now, she's saying, what is the point of being a princess of Eelway if I can't make a difference? Like, what is the point of being there in Rifthold in the capital if she cannot help her people?
Mhm.
Um, and she essentially collapses into Celaena's arms and just cries, and rightfully so. And like, I will say, I feel like that that she would cry for 500 people that she doesn't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're her people, but she didn't know them personally. But the fact that she would cry for them, like, it shows what an awesome leader she'll be.
Yeah. Agreed.
She's a good princess. So after she leaves, Philippa comes in. Philippa is Celaena's uh, maid, for lack of a better word. Um, she comes in with tea for Celaena. So Celaena started having cramps. I loved they included this because so
Yeah.
often people go on these epic journeys and like there's no mention of periods.
Mhm.
How long was Harry, Hermione, and Ron camping for?
Yeah.
Did we get one period from Hermione?
Not a noticeable one.
Not one that that was talked about.
But
Anyway.
also Harry's the narrator and he's like super unreliable. For
That's
being
true.
honest, he wouldn't notice. He'd be like, Hermione was in bed thinking a lot today.
That's a good point. Anyway, just like, I just love that they're including um you know cycles and periods and stuff in this book.
Yeah.
um Philippa sort of adds, and I love that they did this too. So Philippa is like, I guess we'll say, a loyal subject of Rifthold and Adarlan.
Mm.
And she said, what a sin that happened to those Eelway people. And Nehemia is really lucky to have a friend like Celaena. So I think Philippa is sort of, she's growing on, Celena's growing on her.
Yes.
Um, Celaena is sort of like, she's got it bad. Like, she has bad cramps. And she says that she didn't know how she was going to train like this. So Um, so because she was sort of left to the brink of starvation at Endovier, her period stopped, and I guess she was underweight. Now she's gained back the weight. She's been training again. She's gotten healthier, so her periods have come back. And I feel like nobody probably thought about this.
Yeah. Well, who was going to think about it other than her at some
Yeah.
point, maybe?
Yeah. Um, so Chaol sort of comes into the room, and he's like, oh, I really appreciate, you being there and you being friends with Nehemia, and I'm just so sick over this massacre. This is such a sin. I can't believe it. And she's like, oh, I'm sick. And he's like, he thinks that she is just like emotionally sick over the massacre. So he just keeps talking and talking. And eventually she throws up on the floor while he's talking. And I really loved it. I've
Yeah.
never actually had cramps this bad where I throw up. Have you?
Yeah. I haven't had them to throw up, but I've had them where I've been in bed and felt like it, but I haven't actually thrown up.
Yeah. Anyway, so she throws up on the floor. He finally gets that no, she's actually sick. And he thinks she's got like the plague or something. And then she has to literally like straight up be so obvious with him. Dude, I'm on my period. Like she has to say, my cycle is back.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, he's so freaking clueless. But anyway, so he like stammers at her and then runs away like a friggin' immature man-child. Like, oh no, the mention of something that happens to almost all women every month. Like, oh, I can't be here.
Yeah. I found it ridiculous and hilarious that he couldn't handle it. Like, you're the captain of the guard.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's just a bit of blood.
Yeah. And like, if she was actually sick, would he have like felt better about it? At least now she's not infectious. Like, he can't get sick because of this.
Yeah. Anyway, so he runs away, and a little while later, Dorian comes in. And apparently Chaol told him that she was on her period. So he came to tease her. And I guess maybe sort of like make her feel better. Like automatically sort of makes you lean towards Dorian a little bit because he doesn't shy away from her the way Chaol does.
Yes. But it also makes you think that like Chaol was like, she's in bed because of her period. She can't handle it. And like not actually say she was literally throwing up and she's very unwell.
Yeah. So he wasn't at all embarrassed about her being on her period like Chaol was, which again, point to him. He finds a book that she was reading, and it was like a smutty one. She was like, "Oh, I'll let you borrow it," but he refuses. And then she does something that's very smart. She says, "Oh yeah, Chaol also refused to read it," which of course makes Dorian take the book to read. But then he sort of says, "Oh, I won't have you pitting me and Chaol against each other." But like he just took the book.
Yeah.
So
He took
like
the bait.
he did. He took the bait. I just, oh yeah, I won't have you pitting us against each other, but I'm still going to take this book cuz he didn't. Like just seems silly to me. So he sort of like stares at her for a little bit, and then he blurts out that she's beautiful. And he
Which
said,
is what everybody wants to hear when they're on their period for the first time in a year, I guess.
And
Jesus.
have probably throw up mouth and like, yeah, I'm sure it's great. And he said that he'd never known someone so beautiful for so long without courting them. And just so bad. So bad.
Why?
Like, I roll to the nth degree. Anyway, he sort of thinks in his head about how much he wants to touch her. Again, dude, she's on her fucking period. Like,
it's not the time.
Leave her alone.
It is
leave her alone.
It's not the time.
Yeah, it's the place. She's in her room, but it's definitely not the time. So yeah, he's like, oh, I want to touch her so bad. He doesn't say that to her, but just in his head. And yeah, it's like, bleh. We learned a little bit more about Yulemas. Apparently, it's a sexy holiday. Legit, it's a sexy holiday. So it's described as a holiday to celebrate the carnal pleasures that kept one warm on a winter's night. Woo!
Yeah, I kind of missed that part. It's
And
quite the interesting holiday. Very different from our Christmas, which is all about Santa bringing gifts to children.
but apparently it was common for women to, get this, try not to gasp. They wear their hair down
What?
and they don't wear corsets.
What?
I know. Think of the raciness. This is almost too much for us to bear. And then it sort of sobers up a little bit about how he thinks how hard it's going to be for him to celebrate this year, considering his father's court just butchered 500 people. And I mean,
Yeah.
fair. I don't
Yeah.
know how you're going to think about sexy things, even with all this hair like down and no corsets. You see a woman with her hair down, I don't know how you're going to contain yourself. But I guess he's got 500 souls on his mind, so that's sort of
Yeah.
helping. He sort of asked Celaena, like, how is it you don't hate me? Considering, like, my father invaded your country, sentenced you to Endovir, like, the scars that you have on your back are because of my father.
Mhm.
And he sort of says he's ashamed that he doesn't, and, like, he doesn't feel like a man because he doesn't stop his father from committing the atrocities that he did commit. But at the same time, like, we've seen how him and his father interact. Like,
Yeah.
when they're in private, if he says a word against his father hits him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I sort of like, I understand what he's saying. Like, yeah, I see what you mean. Like, you feel like you're one of the very few people that could stop your father and you're not. But at the same time, like, he's terrorizing you too. So I don't think
Yeah.
that should just be all on. I don't think he should take the brunt of that responsibility alone.
No. And like I don't think he'd really be able to do much because like he talked back to his father for 5 seconds and his father was like, "You're still in my court. Like you are not equal to me." So I don't think as much as he can push back, like his father won't listen.
Yeah.
It's not a reason not to, obviously. But it is definitely disheartening. And if nobody else is like wanting the same things as you, then you kind of feel like you're the crazy one.
Yeah.
Because he's got Parrington and he's got his father. They're all against him. So
Yeah. But yeah, so he sort of admits that he chose Celaena as his champion because it would annoy his father.
yep.
So he said that he sort of had to pick someone or risk like dissenting, and apparently he was too much of a coward to not do what he was told. So he had to pick someone. So he picked the person that would annoy his father the most.
There.
And that's literally the only reason he picked her. And like, good on you for admitting it. And like, at least she's out. Like, at least he picked her.
Yeah. We wouldn't have a story.
Exactly. That's right. He also tells her that there's going to be a Yulemas masquerade ball, but she isn't allowed to go. So like, why tell her there's going to be a ball if she's not allowed to go?
Yeah, that's just rude.
It is just rude. And again, like they know her now. They know she's not running away. Why can't she go to the ball? Just let her go to the ball.
I know. It doesn't make any sense.
So before saying goodnight to Celaena, Dorian kisses her cheek.
Ooh.
Ooh, that good old cheek. But like, it's
Her face cheek.
her face cheek. Yes. Yes.
Sorry. YA.
If that was not
YA.
clear, it needs to be. Oh gosh. Anyway, so I guess when Dorian left and she was by herself, she knew that Chaol had like come into the room to ask her something, and then she threw up. So he never did ask what he needed to ask her. So she was sort of wondering if maybe he was going to invite her to the ball.
Ooh.
Ooh, I know.
Scandalous.
But
After the
again,
prince says, "No, you can't go."
yeah. But again, like, he got scared at the sight of, at the mention of a period, so he ran for it.
Yeah. This is not a good point for Chaol, like, for liking Chaol in general.
Yeah.
Not that it's a reason to dislike him, really. It's a reason to maybe get him educated.
Yeah.
Like, he could learn.
He could learn. And in all fairness, like, if he's going to end up with any woman, he needs to get comfortable with periods.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry, I was just thinking of him ending up with a man. So,
well, I mean, maybe. I mean,
like, him and Dorian would be
ideal.
a key couple. Like,
right.
why are they letting her get in between them? They could be in love.
I mean, it would be ideal for him.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we get a little time jump, and a few days later, Chaol is watching Dorian and Celaena walk around outside, which is a bit like sketch. It's like just watching them from afar.
Yeah.
Anyway, he sort of insinuates that he trusts her now, and he's letting the barriers he put into place, he's letting them melt away. And he also sort of like, he gives a nod to her and respects the fact that he sort of like is in shock that at 17 she survived Endovier 12 months, which is 11 months longer than most other people.
Yeah.
And can still, like, she can still laugh about things. She can still carry on. She can still like find pleasure and enjoyment in things. So he really thinks and knows that she's being genuine. So again, I feel like we're seeing a development of feelings that may not be reciprocated as strongly. Right? Like, I'm not saying Celaena's not into him at all, but it just seems like he's probably maybe more into her.
Well, in his head, it does, but it seems like they're both growing mutual respect for each other that they obviously didn't have at the beginning. Whereas I think with Dorian, he's like, I'm in love with her.
Yeah.
And we're like, what?
It's like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So I do think it's a bit different, but it's still like, she's clearly a very, like, I don't want to say a very lovable girl, but she's like
has a lot of qualities that people find
attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, she's cool.
Yeah. Well, and she's very different. And I think that's one of the things that Dorian is really responding to, is that she's very different from the normal courtiers that he sees, because she's a motherfucking assassin. So it's going to be different.
Yeah. We sort of jump into Celaena's head at this point. So that was all in Chaol's head. So now we're in Celaena's head. And she's sort of thinking about what's happened in the past couple of weeks. Apparently, Nehemia has refused to come out on walks since finding out about the massacre. She's kept to her room. 3 champions have been murdered. So that's, just another tick. Like, it's just something that happened.
MBD.
Yeah. And in the latest sort of challenge or test, her good old little buddy Peller has finally been sent packing.
Sin.
So I know, I liked him. He helped her with the poisons, and now he's out.
Me too. And I just want to say a little spoiler, but he never comes back, does he?
No. But like, not in any way. He just never comes back.
Yeah.
He just goes back to wherever he came from.
Which I don't remember where that was, but
I don't think they tell us.
We never hear about
never
him
hear from
ever
him again. So if you were really attached, I'm so sorry.
Just forget about it. In the next 7, 8, whatever books, no more.
No more. So there's only 6 competitors left at this point. So you'll see that we did have quite a few jumps to go from 24 down to 6. We didn't hear about every competition. So there's only 6 of them left. So there's her, Kane, Knox, Grave, who is another assassin, the one that tried to kill Knox on the wall. Renault, who is a mercenary, and another soldier who doesn't get a name, so he's obviously gonna die.
It's another case of the red shirts.
Another case of the red shirt, yeah. Dorian actually then notices that Celaena is wearing a necklace. And it's the one that Elena gave her to protect her. And she tries to be sort of cagey because she doesn't want to say, oh, your ancestor that ruled 1,000 years ago came to me as a ghost and gave me this necklace, so I have to wear it.
Fair.
I don't think that would go over great. So
Sounds crazy.
It does. So she's sort of trying to be a bit cagey and says, oh, yeah, no, I just found it in a jewelry box. It's fine. I would like to know how she has a jewelry box because, where'd she get a jewelry box? And where'd she get all the jewelry from it?
I guess she's pretending to be a lady. She needs something to do that. So, she can say that Philippa brought it or something. But it does seem wild.
Yeah. Anyway, Dorian brings up, then, just out of the blue, King Gavin and Queen Elena, and how she had a magical amulet that protected her from the Dark Lord Erewhon. And it protected her enough that it distracted the Dark Lord so Gavin could kill him. And apparently the amulet has been missing for hundreds of years. But he's seen paintings of it, and apparently it looks just like the one Celaena has on. Coincidence?
Wild.
And she just sort of has to cover and be like, oh, it must be a replica. But we all know it's not a replica. It's the real thing. Anyway, I thought that was just a cute little moment.
Yeah.
Later on, she's in her room reading, and she hears the door to her room close. And she grabs a candlestick as a weapon. And all I can think of is a Belle moment when she grabs Lumiere.
That's good.
Yeah. But it's only Philippa who came in, so she chills out. But the book she was reading fell under her bed. I don't know how it would do that, but it did.
Maybe it fell on the opposite side, down, maybe her bed's against the wall, and it fell between the wall and her bed. And then she had to go really under her bed to get it.
But I don't know. That's not how I picture her room set up. Because in my mind, it's a very fancy schmancy room. So the bed is not up against a wall. It's front and center, just with the headboard maybe against a wall.
Well, maybe it fell the headboard.
I think you're grasping.
Well, she had to figure out somehow. Also, this was a 16-year-old girl writing it, so.
That's true. So she has to crawl under to grab the book, and she sees under the bed that somebody drew a bunch of word marks in chalk under there. And apparently it was the same word mark that was carved into Varen's body. Varen was one of the guys that were killed. So she's freaks out and it's oh my God, somebody is coming for me. So she grabs a bunch of water and washes all the word marks off the floor. And this causes a freak out. She's oh my God, I gotta go. So she runs to the library to sort of try and figure the word marks out. And she finds Nehemia there. First time she's really seen her since finding out about the massacre. And Nehemia is there reading an advanced book in the common tongue. And she sort of says, I didn't think you could understand that high a level. I didn't think you understood common tongue that well. And Nehemia tells her in a perfect common tongue accent, then you're an even bigger fool than everyone else here. And then she leaves. And I just think that's such a boss power move. I just really liked it.
I don't know. I felt that it was a slap in the face to the one person who actually was being nice to her and was trying to be her friend.
I guess, but I feel if Celaena was actually being observant. I feel like maybe she would have noticed some things about Nehemia earlier.
I don't know. There wasn't really anything that we saw as readers that showed that she understood, though.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, maybe there's not something that we noticed, but I feel like that's why we didn't get anything, because Celaena also wasn't paying that much attention.
Yeah, I know, but like, I just think back to the conversation with Kane that happened already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he talks about knowing who she actually is, and like Nehemia didn't even balk at it. So clearly she knows a lot more
Mm.
about Celaena than she says. So I don't know. I feel like it's manipulative.
Maybe. Anyway. So Celaena finds a piece of paper tucked away, sort of at the table where Nehemia had been working. And she starts to think that maybe Nehemia is like not who she says she is. Maybe she's been deceiving everyone. And like, fair point.
Well, that's what she just admitted to.
Yeah,
Deceiving everybody. So
exactly. Um, Next day, another test, or a few days later, another test passes. The nameless soldier, he didn't die. He goes home. So,
wild. That is unexpected.
yeah, red shirt survives.
Must not have been a red shirt.
Um, so there's only one test left until the duel. So again, if you forget, the duel is what takes place with the last 4 contenders. There's no more tests. They just have a big duel to see who wins.
Mm.
Celaena says that she wants to talk to Nehemia again about the other night in the library, but she needs more. Like, she needs more proof. She needs more, I guess, concrete. I don't want to say evidence, but like, she needs to know what questions to ask. So she needs more like information.
Yeah.
She goes back to her room to prepare, and there's a huge bag of candy there for her. And it's all of her favorites, but there's no name on it, so she doesn't know who it's from. And I'm assuming this is like a Yulemas present.
Yeah, I love this.
The
She's
big
so
bag of candy.
excited.
I know.
Yeah. I love how excited she is.
Yeah, she dies for sweets and candy.
Mm.
But I'd like to know who knew all of her favorites.
I think that she just loves everything.
Maybe. So I guess she goes to get ready for temple, because I guess they do have to do some sort of like religious celebration. And when she comes out, I'm gonna say out of her bathroom or dressing chamber or whatever, Dorian is there. Oh, he gave her the candy, and he gives her another present, and it is the puppy from the beginning of this episode, when she told him, "You better not hurt that puppy," and he says, "I swear on my crown, I will not." And so, guess who gets the puppy? She does. She loves it, obviously. So he leaves, and he says, "Maybe I'll see you after the ball. I'm going to try and duck out early." So obviously he doesn't really want to stick around for it if she's not going to be there, which again, I just comes back to my point. Why is she not allowed to go?
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know what makes her wheels start to turn, but Celaena starts thinking that maybe Nehemia is planning something at the ball. Like, she thinks that Nehemia is the one that is controlling the beast, because she says there's no way that a human is committing the murders. She thinks guaranteed it's some form of beast. And she thinks it's Nehemia's beast, and that maybe Nehemia is going to let it loose on the crowd, and thinks not that it would be fair, but that it would be just in her to do that, considering 500 of her people were just massacred.
Yeah, it just seems like such a giant leap to make.
Yeah.
That like this beast has been killing champions who are nobodies in the castle, really, for the most part. So jump from that to attacking everybody at a ball seems wild.
Yeah. So she makes plans then to infiltrate the ball, because she doesn't really have the proof she needs to like tell people. Like, she can't go to Chaol and say, hey, I think Nehemia is behind all this. Because he would literally be like, you're a moron.
Or if he wasn't and she's wrong about Nehemia, like...
Yeah. So she doesn't tell anyone. She just makes plans to infiltrate the ball. And it says the thought of Chaol or Dorian being hurt is more than she can take. And it sort of seems like she's leaning more towards Dorian romantically at this point. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling.
Yeah. So later, I guess, after eating a whole bunch of candies, Celaena is in church at the Yulemas service, and none of the other champions are there. And she kind of wonders why she could come to the service but not go to the ball, especially when she's seen other champions like Nox at balls in the past through her little hidey hole. There's a bit of a funny scene where Chaol kind of like wakes Celaena awake, and he's like, wake the fuck up. And she's like, how did I miss so much? Like, didn't you notice I was asleep before now? This is wild. And then she looks over at him and realizes that he was also asleep. So it's a bit hypocritical on his part, but so is so much. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
But she does wake up, obviously, in time for what's called the Procession of the Gods. So there are 9 gods in, I guess, this realm, and 9 children dress up like the gods, and blindfolded, they walk around the church or temple. And if they stop in front of you, you get the blessing of that god. So the god of war is one of the first that goes out, and it stops in front of Dorian, but then it moves to the right and gives its gift to Duke Parrington. And then the child representing Deanna, the god of the hunt, and maidens, stops in front of Celaena. To her kind of dread, like she doesn't want to be noticed, and she doesn't want anybody to like be looking at her, and which is kind of different than her normal personality, but it's just not a situation where she wants to be noticed. And she says earlier that she believes in the gods when it's like worth her while to, but other than that, she kind of just lives her life. Because like clearly she's had a hard run. It's not something that she's like expecting a gods to help her out with. So the child stops in front of her and gives her an arrow as a symbol of the god's blessing. She says it isn't usable, but it is solid gold, which is kind of cool. And Chaol lets her keep it because he doesn't want to test the gods, and I guess, or anger them.
Yeah, because I guess the concern was that it was a weapon, and she's technically not supposed to have any weapons.
Yes, yeah. So later that night, I guess, Celaena's getting ready for the ball, and it's a masquerade, and she feels like a princess, which is an interesting way to describe her. Celaena mentions it's the first ball that she's gone to without killing someone, which is definitely interesting, especially since the reason that she's going is to make sure that Nehemia doesn't kill people. So it's like, are you sure about that? It seems like this ball is very much the same as every other one that you've probably went to. And she's obviously dressed beautifully, and Philippa found her a dress from nobody knows where that is beyond beautiful and fit for a king. And they kind of do a little ruse where Celaena and Philippa kind of like leave and kind of make a commotion that she's going to be late, and the princess invited her. So they kind of don't want the guards to question her going at all. So they're kind of just making it even more over the top than they kind of need to.
Mm-hmm.
But it works, I guess. It seems a bit unnecessary, but it does work. So Ress takes her arm and brings her to the ballroom, basically. And she reminds herself why she's going. She's trying to keep her newfound friends safe from her friend Nehemia, which is like, I didn't really think that she was that close with Chaol and Dorian. And I thought she was much closer with Nehemia than this whole situation seems like. But yes, she was burned by Nehemia in the last scene, basically. So I get what she's saying. When she walks into the ball, we get Dorian's point of view, and everybody pays attention to her as she walks in. Even the queen gets up to get a better look at her. And Dorian wants to walk to her and take her arm, but Chaol gets there first. And Chaol takes her to a shadowy alcove, and he tells her off.
Oh.
No fun to be had. So it goes back to Celaena's point of view, and she just mentions that Chaol didn't even wear a mask. And
he doesn't seem the type, though. Like, he seems like the type of dude that, like, Halloween, everybody's dressing up, going to a costume party. He would be the one guy who didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So she kind of talks to him at this point. She's like making some good points, like you were talking about earlier. She asks how she can even become the king's champion if they don't trust her to come to a ball. And she's like, Knox is here and he's a thief. So it just doesn't make any sense not to trust her and like they actually believe that she can win. Chaol and Dorian do.
Yeah.
So it does seem insane that they're like, no, we think she can win, but we're not going to let her come here to a ball with people that will employ her, basically. He does let her stay, which is obviously good. But Celaena basically just goes and stands in a corner where she can scan the entire room. And Nehemia is currently sitting with the king. But Celaena, while watching Nehemia at all times, is also a bit annoyed that Dorian hasn't paid any attention to her and is jealous of the large-breasted woman that he is dancing with. Yikes. So Celaena stands there for so long that she kind of feels dumb for thinking so poorly of her friend. And Nehemia actually comes over to her before she leaves the ball to tell her that she looks lovely. In her accented common tongue. And Celaena kind of feels like this is a bit of a slap in the face after talking to her in such perfect common tongue earlier. And she wonders if it's like a warning to keep quiet about the whole library incident. But Nehemia just says that she isn't feeling well and she's like planning to leave. And Celaena is very icy to her before she, I guess, goes back to her room. Chaol kind of notices how cold Celaena is and asks her, like, what is going on between the two of them, or what's going on with her even. And she says that no one's going to ask her to dance because he's glaring at everyone. And he's exasperated by it all, but he moves with her to a more favorable area. And she kind of knows that she can still keep an eye out for a beast from there. And you're like, are you really going to? Like, it just seems a bit foolish. She does have the balls kind of to ask him if he'd like to dance with her. And he laughs in her face and says no. And
jackass.
Right? She tells him he didn't need to be so cruel, but he says that Parrington is here, Duke Parrington, and he's already visibly pissed that she walked in, so he doesn't want to provoke him. And Chaol nods at Dorian and comments that there are more handsome people looking to dance with her. They kind of have a bit more back and forth, and she asks why he isn't dancing with anyone. And he remarks that he isn't really a catch for anyone because he's a lowly captain of the guard.
Aww.
And yeah, it's just like, it tells you a bit more about him that we didn't really get. But she tells him he's better than everyone there and that he's handsome.
Aww.
in her head, she kind of wonders how she missed it for so long, the fact that he was handsome. Because in the beginning of the book, she's like, he's ugly as hell. So,
But like, she's so much nicer to him than he is to her.
yes, 100%. But I think that's just like his demeanor. He doesn't know how to talk to her.
Hmm.
I don't think he knows how to talk to women. Dorian shows up and calls them both radiant, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then he asks her to dance. And Chaol's like, you shouldn't do that. And they're both like, why though? And then they go dance. But with Dorian in front of her, she completely forgets about Chaol, which is kind of sad because she just told him that he's better than anyone in the room and that he's handsome. And it's just like, she's so torn between the two of them, and whoever's right in front of her, I feel like she feels more for.
Well, she literally said he was better than everybody in the room. Dorian is also in the room. So, like, what does that say?
Dorian does say that he had to work up the nerve to ask her to dance because she looks so stunning. And she's a bit disappointed by their conversation and makes her wonder what she actually wants from him.
Roll in the hay. Hot sex.
Seems like it. So they dance for basically ever. But Dorian tells her that while some parents beat their children, his also, let's underline the also, punished him with dance lessons. Which is just like a sign of how bad his child. Not like the dancing, I'm sure, isn't awful, but he did say also beat. They
in addition to beating, they also made him dance.
And it just shows you like how Celaena grew up, that she was like, well, it made you a great dancer. I completely understand it, because like she grew up very similarly.
Yeah.
After the age of 8.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of ignore the dances changing and keep dancing together. And Chaol is watching them and obviously not at all jealous. He's happy he didn't ask her, though, because Parrington is looking at Dorian and Celaena and is super pissed. But you'd think that it would be better for Chaol to be dancing with her than for Dorian to be dancing with her. I don't know.
I feel like I agree with you on one hand, because I feel like obviously Dorian is higher status, so him dancing with her is a bigger deal. But also, the king is not there, so Duke Parrington is the only one there to get pissed. And like, the Duke can't punish the prince.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Dorian's the one that can actually stand up to him about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he might not care as much about Chaol dancing
but he
with
could
her,
get mad about it.
but he could actually do something about it if he was annoyed enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. Touche. I guess a courtier named Ortho comes up to Chaol and asks who the lady is, and they have a bit of a small conversation about her. But then this guy mentions that it's obvious that Dorian is in love with the lady Lillian. And Chaol kind of stares at them and sees the joy on Dorian's face. And he also sees that he looks like a man now. And Chaol kind of wonders when that happened. It's just, that's also such a tropey moment of like, he's a man now because he's been in love.
Yeah.
Chaol's one saving grace, I guess, is that this courtier didn't say that Celaena is in love with Dorian. And he's like, she wouldn't be so dumb to fall in love with the prince. She's a fucking assassin. She can't do that.
Yeah.
We jump over to Kaltain's point of view, and she is pissed beyond belief that Lillian is dancing with Dorian all night, and she wants to find a way to get rid of Lillian.
Dun dun dun.
She's also worried that she'll eventually have to have sex with the Duke since she's made zero progress with Dorian, which is like,
Oh, wah wah.
yeah, nobody would want that. So to have sex with the Duke, I mean, doesn't seem like something anyone would want. We jump back to Celaena's point of view again, and she leaves the ball while Dorian is gone to get them drinks.
I
And
just like that's a bit rude.
it is super rude.
I'm gonna
Like,
go get us some drinks. Okay, bye, and then like peace out.
like, and he's the prince. Jesus. She's
It's like saying it's like going on a dinner date with someone and saying you're gonna go to the bathroom and you'll be right back, and then you duck out the window or something in the bathroom.
exactly.
It's the same thing.
Exactly. She kind of assumes that it's late enough and everyone's safe, so she's happy that she was able to like have some fun out of the night dancing with Dorian, but now her job is done and she can go back to her room. When she gets back to her room, Dorian's already there somehow.
How did he get there?
I don't really understand it, to be honest. Does he know about some secret passageways?
Maybe.
He must. Well, I guess he knows the castle better than she does, so.
Yeah, I suppose.
So he comes into her room and he kisses her, and she's
Woo!
finally on the lips this time.
Yeah, they like make out a little bit.
They do. And she's enjoying it a lot until she kind of thinks of how different things are now than when they first met when she was enslaved because of his father.
Like,
So
why are you thinking that while you're being kissed?
you'd think that she would have thought of this a million other times she's wanted to be kissed by him. It just seems, I don't know, maybe the physically actually happening kind of popped it into her head, but it just seems a bit late now.
Yeah.
Why didn't she think of it when she was holding him dancing?
Great question.
But she's very conflicted now, and she tells him she should go to bed alone. And he kisses her before he leaves, and she's left wondering how she feels because obviously she's conflicted, but she's also feeling happier and lighter. So definitely enjoyed the kiss, we'll say.
Yeah.
Dorian is walking away and he decides that he's going to make this work. So he is 100% in love with her.
Yeah, he's all in. And I like talk to her about it first, man. Instead of being like, "Oh, how can I make this work?" Like, I don't know, ask her how she feels.
Yeah. And like he's even talked about the issues that they have, i.e., his father enslaving her and conquering her nation and all of these things.
The fact that he has a throne and a crown that she probably don't even want.
Yeah. And she has a job and she's going to be working for his father if she doesn't go back to a slave camp. So, this is really a moment where you're just like
talk to
in
her,
shock
please.
at how, yeah, like how is he so oblivious? I guess he's naive, but it just seems so wild.
Yeah.
Another wild thing is Chaol is outside of her balcony watching her while she is waltzing by herself and sees how happy she is. And he's sad because it's not him who's making her happy. You're like, you don't even try to make her happy.
No, like you're rude a lot of the time.
Exactly. So Celaena goes to bed. And then the next morning she wakes up to the dog licking her. And then Dorian just strolls into her room. And she's like, why are you here so early? But he tells her it's 1 p.m. So
I don't
she
know if
slept in quite a bit.
I don't know if I've ever slept till 1 p.m.
I think when I used to stay out late, probably. Like if I stayed out super late the night before, or if I read a book through the night, one of those two, I could sleep in. But not in the recent years.
No.
They make a bit of idle conversation, Celaena and Dorian, and she's kind of comforted by the fact that she would have heard if anyone was murdered in the castle. So she does feel bad for thinking so terribly of Nehemia. But she's kind of satisfied that nobody has been killed.
Right.
She does wonder if her kiss with Dorian meant so little to him because he's being completely normal at the beginning of the conversation with her. But Dorian asks her, I guess, about the dog, and he asks if she's named it yet, and she comes up with the name on the spot and calls him Fleetfoot.
I don't hate it.
I don't either. It's a good name.
Better than Philip.
It's true. Dorian brings up the night before, and Celaena wants to crawl into a hole of awkwardness because it is one of the more awkward conversations in this book.
But like, that's like, have you ever watched like shows on TV now with like teenagers in them? And all of a sudden they start talking about really awkward things. And in my head, I'm thinking, we would never do this when I was a teenager. Like, you don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about things that happen. You either ignore them and let them go away, or you bury them, or you let them fester, or you like write somebody a note and like talk about your feelings that way. Like, you never like talk to somebody straight up.
No.
And I feel
especially yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's what the kids all do nowadays.
But this book is older. But like in this kind of situation, if you kissed last night, you wouldn't come in guns a-blazing saying, sorry. Sorry for being so forward, and ask them to respond to that. You would either act like it never happened, or you would try to kiss them again.
Yeah.
Like those were the two options.
Yes.
There's nothing else. I think kids these days are doing better than we did, but I still found this awkward.
Yeah. Oh, great. But like, you never, ever, ever, and this goes for everybody, do not ever apologize to somebody you kissed for kissing them if you wanted to kiss them and they wanted to kiss you. If it was totally consensual kissing, don't apologize.
Yes.
That's the worst thing to do.
Yeah. Because then it makes it seem like you didn't want to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not smart, Dorian.
No. And like, yeah. Anyway. So he also notices the scars on her back and calls them horrible. And she says kind of a great line here. She says, all of us bear scars. Mine are just more visible than most. And I love that line from this book. I just think it's very poignant. So we go back to Kaltain's point of view, which is an interesting turn. And Kaltain and Parrington are having a nice stroll and chat when he mentions he saw her watching the prince last night, and she doesn't have to pretend. And she's in her head kind of worrying that he knows that she wants Dorian. But he just kind of spins it and talks about how worrisome Lillian is. And then he tells Kaltain the truth. TM. So he basically tells her everything. That Lillian is Celaena, that they're in a tournament, all of this stuff. She mentions looking at his black ring and a pulse in her head hurting like the start of a headache. So she's really suffering from headaches. It's kind of wild how many she's getting. So
it's obviously something.
Yes. She also wonders if telling the court the truth about Celaena will be enough, or if she'll have to come up with something more clever, because we're in her head, so she's saying this to herself. And she asks Parrington how they can let this go on, and he basically just responds that they can't. He tells her about the duel at the end of, I guess, the Yulemas celebration, I would assume, because it's still in a few days' time, and that she should slip something into Celaena's drink so that, like, Dorian thinks that it's an accident, but that Cain will be able to kill her. And he tells her, like, they'll get him on the right path after she's dead. And of course, Kaltain just kind of assumes that she's the right path. But then I guess parenting kind of gives her a smile that she finds terrifying as well.
I don't understand. Like, okay, so I get that maybe she's a little disoriented because of her headaches,
mm,
but in what world is the man that wants you, that has been trying to get you for a while? I just don't understand how that man, how you trust that man to all of a sudden be essentially your matchmaker and help you get someone else. Like, how
yeah.
is that? Like, again, I understand she's having the headaches and maybe that's impairing her judgment. I just don't understand how you can think, yes, of course he'll have my best interest at heart. And of course he'll try and set me up with the prince, even though I'm supposed to marry him. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I think it's more so she thinks that she's so clever at trying to get Dorian. Like, she thinks she's not obvious, which she is, but she thinks she's not. So we jump back to Celaena's point of view now, and she's studying a book. She ends up finding the word marks in it that were near the dead bodies. So somebody has written in the margins of this book, and it says that these marks summon the Ritterak, and the summoner gains the strength of the person that this animal type beast kills. So she's also trying to find out what the word marks under her bed mean, but she doesn't have any luck. But she does realize that, someone's likely opening a portal to the Ritterak and using it to kill off the champions. She reads that word marks kind of exist outside of magic, so it's possible that they can still work even though magic doesn't, which is definitely interesting and a good loophole to make portals possible. She wonders how Nehemia could be hiding this, and how she was so easily manipulated by her. And then she's like, where's Nehemia hiding the strength of the champions? Which seems like you'd notice if someone was getting stronger every week. Celaena also wonders if Nehemia is actually trying to start a full-on rebellion, and that kind of worries her, which is interesting. There's kind of a Harry Potter moment where she's like, where could you even summon a creature that big? And then she's like, oh, of course, in the underground tunnels that were forgotten. And it's the basilisk is in the pipes.
Yeah.
She does say something along the lines of, like, all of the attacks have happened within 2 days of the tests, so there will likely be another attack tonight. But I don't know if that's 100% true with the book.
I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. Like, I haven't, like, to the comments of when people die versus when there's a test.
Yeah.
And especially with all the time
lot.
jumps. Like,
yeah, I think the time jumps kind of make it confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Celaena decides to go through the secret doorway to confront Nehemia and kill her tonight if she has to. She notices that there's, like, disturbed dust and follows it until she hears a man chanting. And it's not Nehemia.
OMG.
Right? The man is speaking in a language she doesn't know. And it's Cain.
Dun, dun, dun.
Such surprise.
Yes, we did not see this coming.
So, obviously, as we've said many times, he's been getting stronger each week. But of course, we didn't realize that before now, even though it's been mentioned on every single time Celaena's seen him.
Mm-hmm.
So Cain summons the Ritterak right as she's there, and it sounds like a nightmarish creature. Its legs apparently bend the wrong way, which is just disgusting. And so Celaena's there watching this creature, and she tries to step back, but she makes a noise, and Cain hears her. and a wind kind of pushes her into the room. And Cain says that it wasn't meant to be her tonight, but he won't waste the opportunity. Which is interesting because, like, everyone wants her dead. You'd think that, why wouldn't they just kill her this way? Why wait until the duel? Like,
I don't know.
I just feel like it makes more sense to just have her murdered by a random beast than try to poison her in public. But
100%.
whatever. So Cain then moves inhumanly swift and like takes Celaena's makeshift knife from her and locks her in the room with this beast. And she does start to panic, which is completely fair.
Yeah.
She thinks that no one's ever going to find her body because nobody knows that this place even exists other than Cain. And she feels bad that Chaol will think that she ran away, and also that she'll never be able to apologize to Nehemia.
And notice how, like, she's thinking about Chaol, not Dorian.
I know, it's kind of wild how flip-floppy her head is, but also she's 18, right? She's 18 years old, so like I get it. If two boys were paying attention to me at 18, I'd probably flip-flop back and forth too.
That's true.
She does remember, though, that Elena, when she came to her in her dreams, said somebody wanted her in the tomb, and she knows it was so that she would know that the sword was there. And she kind of does come up with a pretty good plan. She stands in front of the door, and when the Rhetoric charges for her, she jumps over its head, which just sounds wild. But I guess it basically slams into the door that is locked and destroys it. And while it's still kind of trying to get out of the pieces of the door, she kind of just runs past it and runs for the tomb. She makes it to the tomb and grabs Damaris, which is the name of the sword, and she turns on the Rhetoric and stabs it in the face. But then there's a pain in her hand. And again, this reminds me of Harry Potter and the Basilisk.
Mm-hmm.
And we start to maybe think that its teeth are possibly poisonous because she gets very woozy. And like when she finally makes her way back to her room, she collapses before she can stop the bleeding. So Nehemia finds her and takes her to the bathing chamber to clean her up. She chants in a language that Celaena doesn't know, and then Celaena can see word marks on her arms. And I guess this section just unfortunately ends with Celaena passing out.
Whoa.
Quite the ending.
It is quite the ending. I really enjoy the way that the story is going. Like, and I think we said it before that when I first picked up this book, I was expecting something very different than what I'm actually getting. And I really like the direction that it's going.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episode, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co-Read.
So next week we will be reading the end of Throne of Glass. So that is chapters 43 on. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.